Welcome to the podcast, Nerds and Friends. Today we have Lindsey Kinsella joining us from Scotland. Thank you so much for being here today. Really excited to talk with you about your book, which is The Lazarus Taxa. Great title. Very excited to hear about it.
Thank you, and yeah, thank you for having me.
Of
I'm very
course.
excited. This is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Lazarus Taxa, that is my first novel. And yeah, it's a kind of grounded sci-fi novel.
Ooh.
Follows what is the first scientific expedition through time.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
yeah, so we have a look at what kind of early time travel technology would be like. So there are bugs. It's not very good. It's not super effective as of yet. And we find ourselves travel back 68 million years to the end of the Cretaceous period. And yeah, I take a kind of up-to-date, modern, kind of realistic look at how dinosaurs are presented. Yeah, it's interesting. It's finding the right line between being realistic but being fun at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's really cool.
That's the synopsis.
That's great. I know that the idea of, humans interacting with dinosaurs is something that's just so intriguing and fun to explore. Did you have to do a lot of research to prepare for the novel?
I did. I think what I keep kind of saying on that front is that I began researching the novel at about 15, 20 years before I knew I was going to write it. Because
wow.
I've always been a huge kind of dinosaur nerd.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I think, and that's really what led me to write the book in the first place, is that I had all this, I knew all this cool stuff,
Yeah.
and no one else was using it. No one else. I mean, obviously there is the obvious movie franchise, which
Yes.
we all know of. Other than that, no one was really making use of it, and it's all so cool. And I just felt that it needed to be told from a different perspective, other than one franchise, which is now about 30 years out of date and continues to be.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Are you there, Lindsey?
there was a lot of research, but have you lost me?
It froze for just a second, but you're good.
Good.
Let me make sure. I think it's on. Okay, no, yeah. My internet was being weird for a second, so it's on my end. Sorry about that.
That's okay. But yeah, like I said, I had a solid foundation of knowledge to build on. There was still a lot of research, but it was details. It was details. So it was probably the easier part of the research that I had to do.
Yeah, well, with other research, did you have to look into like concepts of like the theories of time travel and stuff like that to kind of? Yeah.
I skimmed over that a little. I think it was that was a very difficult area to do and to present in a realistic way, because I have to present it in a way that people who understand physics better than I do, which is probably most people, don't think it sounds stupid. And the reality is, once you look into it, everyone who knows what they're talking about effectively agrees that time travel is physically impossible. It doesn't matter what your technology level is like.
Right.
So I had to find a way to do something which is physically impossible, as is agreed by all of the greatest minds in the world, and not make it sound ridiculous.
That's a task right there.
The easiest way to do that was to be quite vague and kind of let the reader fill in the gaps.
Yeah. That's a good approach. That's a good approach.
I hope so. I hope it doesn't just come across as lazy. That's not
I think
what the aim was.
Yeah, you got to be very careful with what you leave vague and what you specify when it comes to things that are you had to be hypothetically believable, but it goes against the science, like you said. So yeah, that's a fascinating line to walk as a writer, you know?
It is, because you can be too specific,
Yeah,
to the point where you're just wrong. Um,
right.
so yeah, I actually found some of the more difficult stuff to research was medical aspects.
Oh, yeah.
Um, my fiance is a nurse, and upon
Oh,
reading certain chapters, she informed me that most of my characters had died several times over, and should not be alive. Um, I am now horrified at how fragile the human body is. But
yeah.
yeah, that was probably the area that I learned most on when I was researching, just because yeah, she then talked me through, medical procedures, and
Yeah.
um, I now know that when someone gets stitched up, they solder it and it smells like beef. Did not know
Really?
that before.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
I'm not sure I wanted to know that, but I do know it now. And now anyone who reads the book will also know that. If I have to be haunted by it, so does everyone else.
That's fair. Well, I was going to ask, I figured that a lot of your characters are in dangerous situations, being that from the synopsis, it sounds like they've gone back to being in an environment that is native to the dinosaurs. So I figure that's a very hostile environment for humans to be in.
It is, and that's. I think that was why I opted for the time travel route, because I really wanted to show dinosaurs in their natural environment,
Yeah.
and I wanted to show them as as animals and not just kind of Hollywood monsters.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted them to behave normally, so I wanted to take certain tropes that have become common with dinosaurs and move them out. The idea that carnivorous dinosaurs just want to eat you all the time. It's not always the case.
Yeah.
You're probably not that big a meal to some of them. And then the
Good point.
idea that herbivorous dinosaurs, well, they'll leave you alone because they only eat vegetables. These people have never come across a buffalo or a bull when they,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I wanted to do that, and then also, like we were talking about, with the time travel being quite rudimentary at this point. It's quite industrial. You can't just time travel willy-nilly. It takes you back there, and you're stuck there for 6 months while it
Oh,
recharges itself. So there's that sort of isolation while you're there as well. You can't just jump back to the modern day whenever
uh,
things get rough.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I wanted to take a different take on time travel, because I feel like often in sci-fi, time travel can be a little lazy sometimes.
Yeah.
It can become just a way to reverse corners that you've written yourself into previously,
Yeah.
um,
Or
or if you
bring
make
back
things
half your superhero franchise so you can keep selling toys. you know.
don't know what you're referring to there. Let's not get sued.
Not get too
Um,
controversial on here.
but yes, that is a very good example of being lazy with time travel. And I wanted to make sure that not only that I didn't do that, but I removed any temptation to do that. And
Yeah.
I wrote a very specific set of rules around time travel that made it not very effective for a storytelling perspective.
And I find as a writer that when something is unreliable or has lots of facets that you need to consider, it makes your writing, it forces you to be more creative with it. So that's a really smart way to do it.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I think it also it avoids any kind of plot holes creeping into. Sometimes if time travel's too effective, you could have a reader going, well, why don't they just go back in time again at this point? And you have to be like, because that would have been boring.
Yeah.
So, you have to make sure that that's not a solution, that that doesn't become a plot hole in your story.
Yeah. No, I love that idea though, that they're waiting for it to recharge so I can take them back, and they have to like survive until then. That adds a lot of a sense of urgency and like drive to survive, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, I wanted to make the team of primary characters there feel quite isolated and quite alone, and they don't have contact with the modern day either. They're very much on their own. I
Yeah.
think that adds to it. That adds to the tension.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, to talk about your writing process some more, I was wondering, we kind of ask all of our guests, are you a plotter or a pantser? Do you outline or do you just kind of go for it and write and kind of see where your story takes you? I was curious which of those ballparks you fall into.
So with this book, I very much pantsed this one.
Nice.
I think that was mostly just because it was my first book, and I think I began to write it before I really knew where I was going. I'm not sure that actually suits me as a process, because now with the book that I'm writing at the moment, I very much planned that out a bit more meticulously. I mean, things still change as you write,
Yeah.
and as characters develop, you begin to go off in different directions, and you let the character drive it a little.
Yeah.
But within a tighter framework this time, because the Lazarus Taxa took me almost 2 years to write, and I think most of that time was rewrites.
Yeah.
Because it either parts didn't make sense anymore, or it just didn't really tell the story I wanted it to tell anymore, and I had to go back and change a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think going forward, I will plot.
Yeah. I did a similar thing with my first book where I pantsed a lot of it, and then for my second book, I've had a pretty good outline that I adhered to, which helped a lot. So
yeah, I think it's easier with the second book in that sense, though, because I mean, if you're anything like me, you probably spent the whole time writing the first book also in your head, coming up with ideas for the second. So by the time I sat down to write the second book, I already had a plan in mind.
yep, I'm the same way. Yeah.
It's just how it goes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, punch this one, but probably won't again because it was stressful.
Yeah, it's good to, like, when you get stuck, when you know what your objective is, where you're going, it helps a lot to break through any stuck points.
It does, and you can still branch off, but you know that you have an end point to work back towards. You can steer it back again.
Yeah.
Whereas if you completely pants it, I mean, I didn't know how it was going to end when I first started to write it.
Yeah.
And what that meant is that I wrote the ending about 4 different times. So, yeah.
Yeah, endings are hard. You want to really bring that catharsis and completion and like leave the reader with something, and it's daunting.
It is, and there are always a number of ways to go, and I think you can go with the sort of happy ending. You can. I'm always tempted to end on a really dark note, and just I have to dial myself back a little.
Yeah.
I'll be like, no, don't kill everyone. And it's finding the balance. You don't want to completely put the reader off and leave them on a total downer.
Yeah.
But also completely happy endings, particularly for a book where I aimed for quite a realistic approach.
Right.
Aren't very realistic. So there's a middle ground.
That's good. Well, I'm excited to see your middle ground when I read your book, because it sounds really neat. The idea of people surviving in a totally hostile environment where there are no other humans, it's riveting. It's exciting. I got goosebumps thinking about it. That sounds really cool. So let our listeners know where they can find your book. I know it's on Amazon. That's where I'm looking at it right now. Where else can they find it?
It's also on Barnes and Noble.
Oh, very cool.
You can pick it up as an ebook on Google Play.
Oh, awesome! That's great.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll just spam it out there until a Google search brings up only my book.
There you go. That's all we can do as indie authors, right? Is just keep putting our stuff out there.
That's the plan. But yeah, certainly it's I think Barnes and Noble has quite a wide distribution range, although not that their postage fees are always too kind.
Yeah,
But I think from effectively anywhere in the world, you can now buy a physical copy.
that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah. If anyone watching is somewhere where you can't, let me know and I'll figure
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah, we'll put links to Lindsey's social media and to his books where you can buy them online in the podcast description. So check that out below the video or below the audio that you're listening to. So yeah, no, that's awesome. We'll make sure that we get your book out there because it sounds really neat. So I'm excited to read it.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's
Yeah.
that's really good. I hope people enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm excited for sure. I haven't read a good dinosaur story in a long time, so I'm really stoked to read something different.
Yeah, well, there aren't too many out there, which I think is what led me to do it.
Yeah,
There was a gap. It felt like something that was being underutilized by not just authors, but popular media in general.
yeah. No, that's great as a storyteller when you see a gap where you're like, I want more stories there for me, and then you can provide it to others as well. That's really, really gratifying.
Yeah. Well, that was exactly it. I wanted to see more dinosaurs, and no one else was really doing it, or not many people were doing it, and not in the way that I wanted to see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a guest in an earlier episode of our podcast who's a paleontologist named Trevor S. Vale. And so if we do another podcast with him, I'd love to invite you onto that so you guys can really get into the nitty-gritty of dinosaur science. I think that'd be really fun for our viewers.
I would absolutely love to geek out about dinosaurs.
Yes.
With
We're gonna make that happen then. That'd be great.
That would be excellent. I would enjoy that. Yeah, we might not want to get too detailed, or we might bore your listeners.
Or the cool listeners will be like, this is exactly what I wanted, and they'll be extra excited.
That's true. That's true. Yes,
This is Nerds and Friends, so we encourage nerding out.
That's very true. It's very true.
Yeah.
That would be brilliant, because that's something that you don't get an opportunity to do much.
Right.
Most people, if you bring up dinosaurs, most people are like, oh yeah, that'll be T-Rex and pterodactyl. You're like,
there's so many more. Yeah, there's I went to a dinosaur museum recently, not recently, it was just before the pandemic in Utah. They have a really great, in Salt Lake City, a really great dinosaur museum with a lot of a lot of bones that they found there in that area, and it was really, really neat to go to.
Yeah.
So.
Utah has excellent fossil specimens, and in fact, a lot of the dinosaurs included in the Lazarus Taxa are not necessarily from Utah specifically, but certainly from North America. It's set in modern day Colorado.
Oh, that's where I'm from, Colorado Springs. That's awesome.
Is it?
Yeah, well, that's my hometown.
Yeah. It's set roughly around modern day Denver. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
But obviously,
then they go back in time. That's so cool.
And that was purely based on the fact that that's where we have such a rich fossil base. We know so much about the animals that lived at that time. And it also gave the opportunity to kind of present some well-known dinosaurs, because that's where a lot of them are from, because a lot of the famous fossils come from, North America, like Cretaceous.
Yeah.
Kind of present them in a new way, present dinosaurs that people think they know, but differently.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that was a thought. And I have plenty of thoughts for follow-up books, which will look at different eras of time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I think for the follow-up's a while away, because I'm working on a different project first, but certainly
Yeah.
would like to look at I'd like to look at the Permian period, which is what predates the dinosaurs, and that was a time where the largest animals around were like kind of proto-mammals, which
Oh,
most people don't know about. These were kind of giant, kind of lizard-looking creatures, I suppose would be best to explain them to people, but they were more closely related to you and me than they were to dinosaurs, and
wow.
these were the biggest predators in the world at the time. I'd love to tell a story about those kind of creatures, the kind of animals that people just don't know about. They're so cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. And that's before dinosaurs became the predominant animal on the planet. It was
That's exactly it. And
wow.
really, dinosaurs got their opportunity because there was a huge extinction event at the end of the Permian, killed like 90% of life on Earth.
Do we know what that extinction event was or no?
We have ideas. I think the leading theory is that it was volcanic, so that there's an area known as the Siberian Traps, which was a volcano. See if I can get my facts right on this. Someone might correct me on this, but from what I remember, this was a super volcano which left a lava lake the size of Mexico.
Whoa.
And it churned out so much carbon dioxide and sulfur that the temperature of the planet skyrocketed. The seas became acidic. So that's the leading theory.
That sounds pretty brutal.
Yeah, well, that's also the kind of thing that I touch upon in the book. I like to take little short kind of inter chapters to talk about just some really cool paleo stuff. We take a little break from the story every now and then, and I like to tie it in. They're like little segues.
That's cool.
We just talk about cool dinosaur stuff and cool paleo stuff.
That's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, it was. Those were fun. Those were fun to write, and that's what I really wanted to get out of the book, to bring these really awesome aspects of natural history that most people don't know about, and I wish they did, because they're cool. I want everyone else to enjoy them just like I do.
It just fascinates the mind, the things that can happen in this part of the universe that we call home. Is just like, wow, like those kind of massive events can take place, and it's just an interesting perspective. I love talking about it.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's the sheer expanse of time as well. It's so difficult to wrap your head around, and I think it comes down to the fact that the brain can't quite wrap itself around, how big a million really is. We talk about a million years, and then before long, when you're talking about geological history, you're soon talking about 100 million years, 400 million years, and it's at that point.
The brain just kind of is just like
it doesn't understand, and we're not evolved that way. At no point in human history was there ever a pressure for us to be able to count to 1 million. We never had to do it.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting to just try and grapple with that. Yeah, it's good fun.
So cool. So great. Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a pleasure talking to you, and can't wait to have you on again. We'll link you up with our paleontologist friend Trevor. We can have a really good conversation. And to everyone who's listened, go check out the Lazarus Taxa. I can't wait to. It's going in my Amazon cart right after this. So really appreciate your time coming on, man. This was awesome.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you.